Hello and welcome. We're excited to have you join us as we explore the journey of successful implementation. Through our structured approach, plan, lead, explore, prepare, deliver, and sustain. Together, we'll walk through each stage of the process, offering practical insights and guidance to help you move from ideas to impact with confidence. Thank you for being here. So let's discover what it takes to turn change into lasting success. Implementation change within an organization is more than just introducing new systems, tools, or processes. It's about guiding people and operations through a structured, thoughtful transformation. Successful implementation requires not only technical execution but also effective change management to align teams, drive adoption, and sustain outcomes. Implementation is the bridge between strategy and impact. It is the roadmap that guides how we move from what we want to do to what we actually do and ultimately to what we achieve. Without a clear and thoughtful implementation process, even the most promising initiatives risk getting stuck in planning stages, losing momentum, or failing to create lasting change. In this video, we will explore a comprehensive framework for implementation built around six essential stages. Each stage plays a unique and vital role in ensuring that change is purposeful, well structured, adaptive, and enduring. So, why should we focus on the implementation process? Many organizations, schools, businesses, and government agencies alike struggle not because they lack good ideas, but because they face challenges in turning those ideas into reality. Implementation is complex. It requires coordination, communication, capacity building, problem solving, and ongoing leadership. By breaking down the implementation journey into manageable stages, we gain clarity and structure. We learn how to prepare effectively, support people through change, adapt based on feedback, and embed new practices into everyday routine. The implementation process is especially important in educational settings, where change impacts students, teachers, families, and communities. But the principles apply broadly to any context where meaningful change is the goal. The implementation process have a well-structured power by itself because each stage is interconnected and builds upon the last. So, when organizations understand and engage in all six, they move beyond episodic or fragmented change towards meaningful, lasting transformation. In this video, we will be looking to gain practical insights, seeing best practices and real world examples that illustrate how to apply these concepts in your context. So, what is the implementation process by definition? The implementation process refers to the step by step method of putting a plan, program, or policy into action. It involves turning ideas or strategies into actual practices, systems, or operations. It's about executing what has been designed or decided. In a school context, the implementation process refers to how educational programs, policies, curricula, teaching strategies, or reforms are introduced and adopted within the school system. It ensures that the new initiative is effectively integrated into day to day school operations. There are so many key stages for the implementation process in a school context, but mainly we will see the planning and preparation stage feeding into the communication and engagement, being translated into professional development and training, and then testing and piloting the ideas on a small scale trial, and then the full implementation of the program or the policy, and then monitoring and evaluating and making sure that we adjust strategies for long term integration and sustainable improvement as we go. Why the implementation process is important? The implementation process, as we mentioned, is important because without a systematic, intentional process to carry out a change, even the best designed plans often fail to produce the desired result. The implementation process will serve as the bridge between the theory and practice. It takes what was envisioned and makes it happen on the ground. So, without it, good ideas can just lead to poor execution and insufficient impact follow through. Implementation process helps ensure that the change is delivered as intended. It is important because many initiatives have specific core components that might be maintained to achieve the intended outcome. A strong implementation process defines what doing it right looks like and supports practitioners through training, coaching, monitoring, and feedback. This helps prevent distortion of the original model, preserving quality and effectiveness. Also, the implementation process builds capacity and readiness. As we all know, change requires new skills, mindsets, and behaviors. The implementation process includes preparing and equipping people with what they need to succeed through training, support systems, resources, and leadership. So, by focusing on capacity building, implementation ensures that those responsible for delivering the change are ready, are confident, and capable, which significantly increases the likelihood of success. Implementation facilitates adaptation and problem solving. No implementation unfolds perfectly or ideally in every context. A thoughtful implementation process creates structures for ongoing monitoring, feedback, and adaptation. This means that when changes or unexpected issues arise, the team can respond quickly and make informed adjustments without losing sight of the core goals. This flexibility is crucial for sustainability and continuous improvement. Also, the implementation process engages stakeholders and builds the buy in. As we all know, change cannot be disruptive and meet resistance if people do not understand or support it. So the implementation process includes communication, involvement, and collaboration with all stakeholders. By engaging those who will deliver or be affected by the change, teachers, students, parents, employees, clients, it builds trust, ownership, and motivation. This reduces resistance and creates a shared commitment to success. The implementation process maximizes return on investment. Initiatives often require significant time, money, and effort. Without a strong implementation process, these investments may be wasted if the change is not effectively embedded or sustained. Implementation maximizes the return on investment by increasing the likelihood that new practices lead to intended outcomes, such as improved student learning, higher productivity, better health outcomes, or enhanced customer satisfaction. Moving forward to talk about the support for sustainability and long term impact, implementation is not just about launching a new program, but ensuring it endures and evolves. The implementation process sets the stage for sustainability, embedding practices into systems, culture, and ongoing professional learning. So, without deliberate implementation efforts focused on sustaining change, initiatives often fade away once initial funding or enthusiasm is vanished. Last but not least, we're going to touch base on how implementation provides a framework for accountability. A clear implementation process defines roles, timelines, and expectations. This creates accountability structures to ensure tasks are completed and goals are met. Accountability mechanisms such as regular progress monitoring, data review, and leadership oversight help keep the implementation on track and identify when corrective actions are needed. So, in essence, the implementation process is important because it turns ideas into reality. It supports quality, builds capacity, enables adaptation, fosters buy in, maximizes investment, ensures accountability, and lays the groundwork for sustainability. Without it, even the most innovative and promising programs risk failure. Effective implementation is often the difference between a good idea remaining a good idea and becoming a meaningful, lasting improvement. This is the model that we are going to focus our video today on. We will start talking about the first stage of the implementation process, which is the plan, and then we will move to talk about the lead stage. Explore stage will follow, prepare stage, deliver stage, and sustaining the implementation stage. It's very common that when we produce our strategic plans and our action plans, we outline the actions, we outline the evidence required, we outline the success criteria. But what we do not sit and plan properly is the implementation process. And that's why we fail to achieve all our goals on time as we expected. When we put a certain strategic plan and we accompany that with a proper implementation process that takes into account all those 6 stages, we will be able to achieve excellence on time without burning out people and failing to reach what we are aiming for. Implementation remains to be the hidden gem for the success of any written plan. Starting with the first stage, which is planning, I consider this to be the foundation. It involves defining the vision and goals of the initiative, conducting needs assessments, setting clear objectives, and mapping out resources, timelines, and success indicators. Effective planning ensures that everyone understands what the change is about, why it matters, and what success looks like. A well developed plan identifies potential challenges, anticipates risks, and sets the stage for informed decision making. It's a collaborative process that involves key stakeholders from the outset to build ownership and alignment. Moving to the second stage, which is leading. Leadership is the engine of implementation. Strong leaders create a culture that supports change, inspire commitment, and drive the process forward. This stage focuses on identifying and empowering leadership teams, clarifying roles and responsibilities, and developing communication strategies. Leadership is not just about top down direction, it's about fostering shared responsibility, distributing leadership across teams, and modeling the behaviors and attitudes needed for success. Moving to the third stage, which is explore. The explore stage is about deepening understanding and readiness. So, here, organizations assess their current context, uncover strategies and gaps, and engage stakeholders in learning about the initiative. This stage often involves piloting new practices on a small scale, collecting feedback, and refining the approach before full scale implementation. Exploration helps reduce uncertainty and builds confidence. Moving forward to the prepare. Preparation turns insights into action. So it includes professional development, resource allocation, creating support systems, and aligning policies and procedures. In other words, what we are doing at this stage is preparing well everyone involved with the knowledge, skills, and tools they need to succeed. It also means ensuring logistical details such as schedules, materials, and technical infrastructures are in place. Moving to deliver. Delivery is where the plan comes alive. So this stage marks the launch of the initiative across the organization. It involves executing the planned activities, providing ongoing support and coaching, monitoring fidelity, and addressing challenges in real time. Delivery requires flexibility and responsiveness to adapt practices as needed while maintaining focus on goals and quality. Last but not least, we will talk about the sustain stage where we are looking at the sustainability to ensure that change lasts. This stage focuses on embedding new practices into the culture, policies, and routines of the organization. It involves continuous learning, leadership renewal, resource planning, and monitoring outcomes over time. Sustaining change prevents backsliding and helps organizations evolve the initiative to meet emerging needs and challenges. Let's look now in details into each one of those stages, highlighting the purpose behind each stage, the key activities, and the outcome. So, the purpose of the plan stage is to lay the foundation for a successful implementation. It involves understanding the need, defining the vision, and creating a clear strategic roadmap for change. What are the key activities at this stage? Firstly, the needs assessment. We need to know why we are implementing a change. So we need to identify the gaps in the current practice or performance. This could involve reviewing the data and identifying areas for improvement. So this involves all the stakeholders that are required to buy into this new initiative that you need to implement. The second key activity is the goal setting. We need to define what the implementation aims to achieve. So we need to put smart goals, goals that are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bounded. The third activity, which is the vision and alignment, we need to ensure that the planned change aligns with the broader mission, values, or improvement priorities of the school or organization. The fourth activity, which is stakeholder analysis, you need to identify the key stakeholders and assess three things among them: their influence, their interests, and the support needed for them to excel in implementing the plan. Last but not least, the strategic planning. We need to develop an action plan with timelines, milestones, deliverables, and success indicators to be the backbone for the implementation process. What is our outcome? We expect to achieve from this stage a shared understanding of what will be implemented, why it matters, and how success will be measured. This statement under the third part here, the outcome, is key. And if you are meeting with your stakeholders and you put this statement on the table in front of them, and you are able to have answers for those three key questions, then you will have a well structured implementation process that will be impactful in your organization. So, in other words, make sure that you end up the stage of planning with answers for the three questions: what will be implemented, why it matters, and how success will be measured. Now you will be able to move to the second stage, which is lead. The purpose of this change stage is to make sure that effective leadership is at its readiness level. So, this phase is about mobilizing leadership, creating a supportive environment, and building readiness for change. The key activities involves establishing implementation teams. You need to form dedicated teams with clear roles and responsibilities for overseeing and supporting implementation efforts. Once you do that, then you need to think about developing leadership capacity. How we can ensure that school leaders or project managers are equipped with the skills and knowledge to guide others. The third key activity is to foster a culture of trust and collaboration by building positive relationships and open communication among staff. You need to keep in mind that when you are implementing a new idea or a new program, then there is a huge room for error. And for people to feel confident of implementing the change, they need to be assured that there will be a level of acceptance and tolerance for mistakes which might come on the way. And those mistakes will help everybody shape up the ideas rather than this will put their jobs at risk. So, fostering a culture of trust is one of the key components for a successful implementation. Fourth key activity is to communicate the vision. Make sure you inspire and you motivate stakeholders through clear, consistent messaging about the purpose and the expected impact. Last but not least, address resistance. You need to identify sources of resistance and address them through dialogue, through training, and through reassurance. So, discussions that focus on what if are very critical, where you give people different scenarios of expected outcomes or expected obstacles that might hinder them from achieving success from the first trial of implementation. Addressing resistance should be a very important key aspect that you will dedicate time and effort for. Otherwise, people will resist the change and the implementation process will fall apart. What we expect from the stage as an outcome is a leadership infrastructure that champions the change and motivates others to engage meaningfully in the process. If we do not build this leadership infrastructure, then this will result in a very weak foundation where the implementation process will be very fragile to fall apart at any minute. And when we talk about leadership infrastructure, we're not talking about the leader of the project. We're talking about every stakeholder who is playing a key role in the implementation process. That's why when we spoke about the key activities, first and second activities were focused on establishing the implementation teams and developing the leadership capacity. guide your teams, draft for them the meeting agendas, draft for them the key stages of the project with clear expectations weekly and monthly to make sure that they know what they have to do rather than leaving them with vague guidance and expecting the implementation to be successful. So don't walk out of this stage without knowing that you have established a solid leadership infrastructure that will champion the change and motivate others to engage in the implementation process. The third stage of the implementation process is the explore. The purpose here of this stage is to help identify best practices, examine the evidence, and pilot new approaches to reduce risk and increase effectiveness. The key stages starts with research and evidence gathering. When you want to have a successful implementation, start with investigating what has worked elsewhere. So do an intensive research. Try to collect case studies, academic research papers, and lessons from other schools. And then try to test to see how you will identify and select solutions where you choose programs or you tailor the best practices learned from elsewhere to align it with your school's goals and context. Then pilot testing, where you implement a small scale trial to test feasibility and to identify barriers. The fourth activity will reside on collecting data from the pilot phase, including qualitative and quantitative feedback from participants. And the last activity will focus on adapting and refining by using the insights from the pilot to adjust the implementation plan for broader rollout. As an outcome, you need to make sure here that you have validated the approach, you have tested it, refined it, and tailored it to your unique context of the school or the organization. So I will walk out of the exploration stage having a validated approach that has been tested, has been refined and tailored to the unique context of the school or organization. By that, I will be minimizing the risks. I'll be limiting my failure options, and I'll be able to oversight what could come in my way that will hinder the success of the implementation process, that might limit its impact on the long term run of the institution. The fourth stage, which is prepare. This phase ensures that all necessary resources, training, systems, and supports are in place before full implementation takes place. So, here we're going to focus our discussion on five key activities. The first one is focused on delivering training to staff so they understand the initiative and are confident in executing it. And when we talk about professional development, we're not only talking about training, we're talking about coaching, we're talking about one to one sessions, we're talking about mentorship, where guidance is given to individuals to build confidence in execution. And this is key. Second activity, where we develop resources and tools by creating materials, guides, and protocols to support implementation. Some people look at this as spoon feeding, where I don't. Because at the end of the day, we need to ensure consistency of implementation. We need to maximize the impact. So when we prepare proper resources and guiding tools, then we're helping people to understand what is required and to implement it in the best possible way without guessing, without trial and error, without the feeling of insecurity in what they are doing or how they are doing it. The third activity, which is aligning policies and systems, make sure when you look at an implementation process and you are in the prepare stage that you adjust school policies, schedules, assessment systems, or technology platforms to support the change. I cannot implement a new idea in isolation where whereby every other component of the school is untouched and remain unchanged. When we want to implement a certain idea or a program, we have to think, how does that affect the policies? How does it align with the policies? And what are the systems that will be affected? Once we take into account all those factors, then our implementation will succeed. The fourth activity, which is communication plan. As we mentioned before in the first stage, that we need to create a strategic plan, but this is not the only plan that is required. We need to support that with a communication plan where we continue to share updates, expectations, and support information with stakeholders. So, this communication plan could be a weekly newsletter, it could be weekly thoughts and insights that help people remain up to date with what is happening, celebrate success in small steps that they have taken, building confidence, share the expectations, share the next steps with them, so by then they can remain on track with all the other duties and responsibilities that they have to carry forward. Last but not least, which is the readiness checks. Make sure that you assess the school's or team's readiness to move forward. So prepare surveys, prepare checklists, plan for team meetings where you brainstorm, you allow people to reflect on what they have done, on what they have prepared, on how it started. Embrace all the challenges. Listen to the problems with a solution oriented mindset rather than masking people without knowing what they have in mind that might affect the roadmap of your implementation process. As an outcome, we expect to have a well prepared environment where all stakeholders know their roles, have the resources they need, and are ready for implementation. The fifth stage that we will now shift gears to is deliver. The deliver phase is the full scale launch of the initiative or change. It's where plans are put into action and monitoring begins in earnest. The key activities starts with implementing at scale, rolling out the program or policy across the school or systems, providing ongoing support by offering coaching, mentoring, help desks, or check ins to address challenges in real time, monitoring progress by tracking the key performance indicators through observations, surveys, or assessment. The fourth activity, which is collect feedback, creating a mechanism for ongoing feedback to identify areas for improvement will allow for an early intervention. So the fifth activity will be following, where we have a responsive adjustment using the data and feedback to make real-time adjustments to the implementation strategies before we start having massive challenges and obstacles which will not be resolved in time to allow for the implementation process to remain a success. So, as an outcome, the initiative here will remain to be active, supported, and responsive with clear evidence that it is being implemented consistently and effectively. So, when we will establish this outcome, and we have a proper delivery phase, the initiative will remain active in its nature, supported by the leadership infrastructure, responsive, and clear evidence will be collected through the monitoring progress that we will do, the mechanism for ongoing feedback to identify areas of improvement, and the usage of data to inform future planning and adjustment. Last but not least, we will talk about sustain. The purpose of this stage is to make sure that the implementation success is meaningful and long lasting. So the sustain phase focuses on embedding the change into the organization's culture to ensure long term impact. The key activities in this phase is the institutionalized practices. So we need to make the initiative a regular part of school operations, policies, and professional practices. We need to acknowledge achievements, progress, and impact to build morale and maintain motivation by celebrating success as our second activity. We need to meet regularly to evaluate effectiveness and refine strategies to adapt to evolving needs, and this is the continuous improvement activity. The fourth activity is to maintain resources and support by ensuring ongoing access to training materials and leadership support. Last but not least, plan for leadership transitions, where we prepare for changes in staff or leadership to ensure continuity. So, as an outcome, and this is a very uh, important statement which is dear to my heart, as an outcome, the change becomes part of the school's DNA. When we talk about the school's DNA, we're talking about the embedded implementation process that becomes part of the culture, part of the school system. So the change becomes part of the school's DNA, sustained through leadership, through embedded routines and a culture of reflection and improvement. For schools to succeed, for organizations to make the best out of their human and capital resources, they need to make sure that the implementation of new programs and policies are not aligned and connected to individuals. That implementation, it is part of the school's DNA. It becomes a property of the school, part of its system, accepted, embraced, and lived by every single individual working at the school. So by then, we are sustaining that and we are celebrating it as we go. To summarize what we have been talking about in the few previous slides, we are looking at a summary table which specifies all the 6 stages, summarizes the purpose of each one, the key activities that is aligned with each one, and the expected outcomes. If you take this table, you print it and you put it in front of your team, when you are done with your strategic plan, when you are done drafting a new intervention program, and you start finding answers for each one of the mentioned stages, answering the questions that we have been asking throughout this video, coming up with drafts for the answers, identifying the outcomes that you are expecting from each one of those stages, then you will be able to achieve excellence in what you have planned, and you will be able to have a powerful roadmap to help your organization and leaders move beyond good intentions and ambiguous ideas, to guide them through every step to ensure that your initiatives do not just start well, but thrive and endure. At the end of this video, what I would like to say is that while these stages highlight structures and strategies, it's important to remember that implementation is fundamentally about people. It's about relationships between leaders and teams, staff and stakeholders, organizations and communities. It's about listening, emphasizing, supporting, and learning together. Successful implementation honors the complexity of human dynamics and cultivates an environment where individuals feel valued, heard, and motivated to contribute. With the existence of AI tools, we can have access to ideas, case studies, best practices just by clicking a button on the PC. But what we will not be able to get is a successful implementation, because we need to make sure that there is a commitment to planning. We need to find a leader who is leading boldly, exploring openly, preparing thoroughly, and delivering diligently to sustain the intentional change that we want to have and make a difference between initiatives and lasting success. You need to remember when you put an implementation plan that no one accomplishes everything on their own. Surround yourself with partners, surround yourself with collaborators and champions who share your vision and can support you at every stage. Change is never easy. It demands effort, resilience, and patience. But when done well, implementation transforms ideas into powerful improvements that uplift individuals, teams, and entire communities. Thank you for investing your time and energy into learning about the implementation process. We hope this series has equipped you with new insights, tools, and confidence to lead change effectively. Remember, successful implementation is a journey, not a destination. Together, let's turn great ideas into lasting impact.